Sunfyre Origins, the Dragon of Aegon II. Before we begin, beware of dragon-sized spoilers that are coming up ahead. Therefore, stay here at your own risk or fly away. Aegon Targaryen, the second of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, will be quite a thing to watch as House of the Dragon progresses. Played by Ty Tennant as a young boy and Tom Glencairn as an adult, Aegon would turn out to be a lecherous man whose waves of anger came quickly, but he was slow to forgive. But his softer side comes to light in the presence of his magnificent yet terrifying dragon called Sunfyre, the most beautiful dragon in all of Westeros. Also called Sunfyre the Golden, Aegon's mount had gleaming golden scales, which resonated with the color of Sunfyre's fiery breath. The young dragon quite literally would shine as gold shines under sunlight, but beauty was not his only attribute. Aegon's dragon was a beast that never gave up and would win the young king at least 2 game-changing battles. But the formidable young dragon would suffer great physical injury, so much so that he became a great golden fire-breathing chicken from the most beautiful dragon ever seen in George R.R. Martin's world. Interestingly, Sunfyre the Golden could be inspired by Marvel's Sunfyre, an X-Man who could generate superheated plasma and fly. In this video, we will explore Sunfyre's ironic and iconic yet tragic history before assessing why Sunfyre is a real Targaryen jewel, before assessing who would win a battle between Rhaenyra's Syrax and Aegon's Sunfyre. Let's Dracarys. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Sunfyre the Golden's ironic and tragic life story. It is unknown when exactly Sunfyre was born, but the beautiful dragon hatched from his egg in Dragonstone. However, the books do offer a piece of information from which we can vaguely ascertain his birth year. It is known that Sunfyre was elder to Targareyan, the dragon of Daeron Targaryen, who was the younger brother of Aegon II and son of Viserys and Alicent. Now, Daeron was born in the year 114 AC, and by 120 AC, Daeron and Targareyan had bonded with each other. Although Daeron did not ride the dragon yet, naturally, Targareyan may have been born around 114 AC, give or take 5 years. This means that Sunfyre may have hatched between 105 and 110 AC, because by the year 120 AC, Aegon Targaryen had claimed and bonded with Sunfyre. However, it is beyond doubt that even in 120 AC, Sunfyre was a fairly young dragon. The two of them rather grew together and went on several rides across the sky before the Dance of Dragons started. However, to understand the role that Sunfyre played in the Dance of the Dragons, and his importance to Aegon II, it is important to shed some light upon the prelude to the Dance of Dragons and the first major battle at Rook's Rest. According to the books, Aegon was born in the year 107 AC, but the HBO show delayed his birth by almost 6 years. He was the firstborn son of Viserys and Alicent, but by then, Viserys had already named Rhaenyra the heir to the throne. Furthermore, all the lords and knights of the Seven Kingdoms had pledged their fealty to Rhaenyra and bent their knees. Aegon had 2 brothers, Aemond and Daeron, and a sister named Helaena, whom he would later marry. Despite having 3 sons, King Viserys still saw Rhaenyra as his heir, a fact that repulsed Alicent, who wanted Aegon to succeed Viserys and not her stepdaughter and former friend. But Alicent did not seem to value the solemn oaths that the lords had taken to defend Rhaenyra's rights. She went as far as suggesting a match between Rhaenyra and Aegon to King Viserys, her husband. And although incest was something of a tradition in the Targaryen family, King Viserys did not agree to the match, because the two of them were 10 years apart. Rhaenyra later married Laenor Velaryon, the son of Corlys and heir to Driftmark. The match was a strong one, and was aimed at strengthening Rhaenyra's claim to the Iron Throne. However, Rhaenyra's children and Alicent's children had taken to the rivalry between their mothers, and although they trained under the same masters of arm and learned from the same maesters, they were never in each other's good books. Aegon turned 13 in 120 AC and successfully bonded with Sunfyre. However, I should warn you that this year might be getting changed in the show. Anyway, it was also in this very year that both Daemon and Rhaenyra lost their spouses and ended up getting married. Just short of a decade later, Viserys died in his sleep when Rhaenyra was in Dragonstone due to her pregnancy, and this death would become the beginning of the end of the Targaryen dynasty. Alicent and others who supported Aegon's claim decided to keep the king's death a secret from the realm until preparations were made for Aegon's coronation. Alicent had become so hungry for power that she let her husband's body remain without a funeral for 7 days. In fact, the king's body had started to swell and rot, but Aegon had grown weary of his council trying to convince this house and that house to support his claim. Growing impatient and tired of secrecy, Aegon demanded to be coronated immediately. However, Sir Steffon Darklyn of the Kingsguard reached Dragonstone to give the news that Aegon had been proclaimed the King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men. Clearly, Rhaenyra disputed Aegon's ascension and swore to take back what was rightfully hers. Initially, the Greens, or the side supporting Aegon, faced several defeats, especially in the Riverlands. However, Sir Criston Cole, now the Hand of King Aegon, took it upon himself to change the status quo. Aegon had gone weary of the diplomatic methods that Sir Otto Hightower was taking, and that's why he was replaced by Sir Criston Cole. The new Hand devised an aggressive strategy to land a severe blow on the Blacks, the side that supported Rhaenyra. He marched with 100 knights, 500 men-at-arms, and 1,500 sellswords to the gates of Rook's Rest. Lord Sonton of Rook's Rest sent a raven to Rhaenyra seeking her help, and in the end, Princess Rhaenys, or the Queen Who Never Was, arrived on her dragon Meleys. Princess Rhaenys and her dragon slaughtered almost 800 men. The Greens launched a scathing attack on Rhaenys and Meleys using arrows and scorpions, but Rhaenys was able to dodge these. But as we mentioned earlier, this was an elaborate plot by Sir Criston Cole. Out of the blue, and quite literally, Aegon and Aemond came to Ground Zero at the backs of Sunfyre and Vhagar. The two brothers and their dragons attacked Meleys while the dragon was burning Criston's soldiers. Rhaenys had been surprised, but she and her dragon did not know about quitting. The three dragons fought with fire and ferocity 1,000 feet above the ground. At one point, Meleys had managed to clasp Sunfyre with her jaws, and Sunfyre's story would have ended here. But to Sunfyre's rescue came Vhagar, who fell on Meleys and Sunfyre from above. Now, Vhagar was the dragon that belonged to Visenya Targaryen, Aegon the Conqueror's elder sister and wife. Having lived for over a century, she was the largest living dragon of her time, so much so that she had attained the size of Balerion the Black Dread. And this magnificently large dragon happened to fall upon Meleys and Sunfyre. The impact was such that Meleys and Princess Rhaenys lost their lives, and Sunfyre sustained grievous injuries. However, Vhagar rose unscathed. The loss of Rhaenys and her dragon proved to be a severe blow to Rhaenyra and the Blacks who supported her, but something worse happened to the Greens. The impact from the fall had torn one of Sunfyre's wings. The mighty dragon was now unable to move or fly. Furthermore, his rider, King Aegon, had suffered severe burns and remained incapacitated for almost a year. While he recuperated in King's Landing, his younger brother Aemond sat on the Iron Throne as the regent. On the other hand, Sunfyre could not be moved because he was too heavy, and was left near Rook's Rest so that he got time to heal. Although he was a dragon, Sunfyre was vulnerable to attacks from men. Naturally, Sir Criston Cole left some of his men to guard the fallen dragon. But a dragon's gotta eat, right? Initially, Sunfyre ate the corpses of the soldiers who had died in the Battle of Rook's Rest, and when there remained no more corpses, Criston's men provided the dragon with fresh cattle. By now, Rook's Rest was under the control of the Greens, and Sir Criston Cole had left a few men at the castle. However, Lord Wallace Mouton of Maidenpool surprised the garrison with a small army that comprised knights from Maidenpool and 3 other houses. Lord Mouton managed to retake the castle in Rhaenyra's name, but Mouton was stupid enough to think of slaying the wounded dragon. He took his strongest men and killed Sunfyre's guards, but a wounded dragon is still far fiercer than the bravest of men. Sunfyre fought back with Dragonfire and his tail. He killed almost 60 men, including Lord Mouton. When Lord Mouton's brother arrived at Rook's Rest a fortnight later, he found that Sunfyre had mysteriously escaped. It turns out that by now, Sunfyre had healed from the injuries he had sustained while fighting Rhaenys and Meleys. However, his torn wing had healed at an awkward angle, meaning that although he could fly, he was not the same dragon he once was. Sunfyre was known to the realm for his majestic beauty, but now he was nothing more than a disfigured beast, who scavenged on the dead. A few months later, Criston Cole and Aemon Targaryen left King's Landing to march on Harrenhal. This left King's Landing bereft of any major defenses, hence creating an opportunity for Rhaenyra to take her spiky office chair. While Rhaenyra and Daemon circled the skies of King's Landing, Corlys Velaryon's fleet made its presence known in Blackwater Bay. Naturally, King's Landing found itself in a state of panic. Queen Dowager Alicent tried to send ravens to her son Aemond, but the Gold Cloaks stopped that from happening. They had turned against the Greens because they once served Daemon. In the end, King's Landing was captured by the Blacks, but to their utter dismay, King Aegon managed to flee. In reality, Aegon's Master of Whisperers, Lord Larry Strong, had smuggled his king. Aegon barely escaped King's Landing and reached a remote fishing village in Dragonstone, where he disguised himself as a commoner. By now, House Crabs and Bruins of the Crownlands discovered that Aegon's dragon Sunfyre was hiding in a dark piney woods of a peninsula called the Crackclaw Point. Interestingly, Dragonstone was not very far south of Crackclaw Point. Eventually, Sunfyre left the forested peninsula and reached Dragonstone to unite with his rider. According to Archmaester Gildane, who is known for his work on the history of House Targaryen, Sunfyre came back to Dragonstone because of two reasons. First, it was the dragon's primal instinct to return to his place of birth. Secondly, the dragon wished to rejoin his rider, who was in desperate need for help. Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones once said that some maesters believe that dragons are more intelligent than men. I believe he was unknowingly talking about the sixth sense that the dragons possessed. Anyway, Sunfyre had reached Dragonmont, a volcano in Dragonstone. A few sailors happened to see the devoured carcass of a wild dragon named Grey Ghost and another dragon with golden scales. While some believed that Grey Ghost had been eaten by another wild dragon named Cannibal, Aegon knew better than that. The mention of golden scales piqued his interest in this dragon, along with three men named Tong Tangletongue, Tom Tanglebeard, and Marston Waters. The disguised Aegon left for Dragonmont to find Sunfyre. The small search posse found Sunfyre hidden on Dragonmont, and Aegon knew that the battle was not lost after all. Aegon was now riding Sunfyre every day, and both of them were regaining their lost strengths. Meanwhile, Aegon's supporters tried to garner as much support for the fallen king as they could. Aegon's first priority was to take back Dragonstone from the Blacks, but that was not going to be easy. After much ado, Aegon successfully retook Dragonstone, but not before Baela Targaryen, the daughter of Daemon and Laena, managed to escape on her dragon named Moondancer. When Aegon flew over to the castle atop Sunfyre to celebrate the victory, he was unpleasantly welcomed by Baela and Moondancer. Baela's dragon was smaller and younger than Sunfyre, but was quicker. Baela commanded Moondancer to attack Sunfyre's weirdly healed wing, and it exacerbated the situation for Sunfyre. However, the mighty dragon blinded Moondancer with his golden flames. Yet the two dragons engaged each other until both of them fell to the ground. Being heavier and much larger than Moondancer, Sunfyre crushed and killed the younger dragon. Baela was taken captive, but Aegon broke his legs because he had tried to jump off Sunfyre during the fall. By now, Sunfyre had lost all his glory and regality. He was nothing more than a great golden fire-breathing chicken because Sunfyre could hardly move, let alone fly. Furthermore, he had earned himself a fresh set of deadly scars and wounds. He had not entirely healed from his battle with Meleys, and the tussle with Moondancer left him in a worse state. After the battle, Sunfyre resorted to feasting on Moondancer's carcass. Anyway, as far as Aegon was concerned, his broken legs became a source of unceasing pain. When Grand Maester Gerardes of Dragonstone offered him some milk of the poppy for his pain, Aegon refused. Actually, during the battle at Rook's Rest, Aegon's armor had melted on his arm because of dragonfire. He was given milk of the poppy, but the liquid clouded his mind and made him sleep for long hours. His health was in such a sorry state that he often prayed for his death. Remembering all this, Aegon believed that Gerardes was after his life. Naturally, Aegon first had his men strangle the Grand Maester and then disemboweled. Sunfyre then feasted on Gerardes' innards and upper torso. Back in King's Landing, Rhaenyra was executing just about anyone and everyone she thought challenged her claim to the Iron Throne. Soon, she gained the notorious nickname of King Maegor with Teats. Maegor was the son of Aegon the Conqueror and was the third king to sit upon the Iron Throne. However, he was a ruthless and cruel man who killed thousands, including septas, septons, and the men who finished the construction of the Red Keep. Anyway, coming back to the contemporary time, the people of King's Landing were living in absolute fear and were on the verge of revolt. The last nail in the coffin of Rhaenyra's rule was the suicide of Aegon's sister wife Helaena. Although she jumped off a window on Maegor's holdfast, rumors of her murder spread across King's Landing, and even for a house that kept dragons as pets, it was difficult to rule a city full of angry and paranoid people. Rhaenyra fled to King's Landing and reached Dragonstone, unaware that it had been taken over by Aegon. Rhaenyra was soon taken captive and brought before her half-brother, but when she saw Sunfyre's crippled body, she burst into laughter. Enraged, Aegon fed his half-sister to his dragon and made her son Aegon III, or Aegon the Younger, watch the entire sequence of events. Sunfyre burned Rhaenyra's body and devoured her in 6 painful bites. In the end, all that was left of the realm's delight was her left leg. Not long after this, Sunfyre succumbed to his stinking wounds from the battle with Moondancer, and Aegon mourned his dragon's death as he would mourn his own child's. Aegon tried his best to hatch more dragon eggs in order to get a new Sunfyre, who would be prouder and fiercer than the last. But much like Aegon's time on the Iron Throne, his dream of a new Sunfyre turned to ashes. Why is Sunfyre one of the best Targaryen dragons? I'll be honest with you, I can watch John Wick kill like 299 people in a span of 3 movies and not bat an eye, but when one dragon dies on screen, I lose my crap. I mean, think about it. Although they are fire-made flesh, dragons are far from monsters. They are pure at heart, and it almost seems like their souls are kept purified by the fire they carry within them. And Sunfyre's death in the books and his imminent death in the show at some point will definitely be something that will hurt people more than they realize just yet. Sunfyre was clearly one of the best dragons that the show will feature. You ask me why? Well, for starters, despite being a relatively young dragon, he holds his ground against monstrosities such as Aemon's Vhagar, Daemon's Caraxes, and Rhaenys Meleys. We all know how deadly and humongous Vhagar is, and you can check out our video on Caraxes to know why he is also called Bloodworm. On the other hand, Meleys was a force to reckon with. Belonging to Alyssa, mother of King Viserys, Meleys was known to be the swiftest of dragons, and her speed was no match for her cunning. Later, she was claimed by Princess Rhaenys, the queen who never was. In the battle that took place in Rook's Rest, it was Sunfyre who walked out alive, not Meleys. Secondly, even though he was fatally injured, Sunfyre successfully killed Moondancer, but that's not it, and he even killed the Grey Ghost, an untamed wild dragon. If that's not strength, I don't know what is. But strength doesn't always come from your physical structure, does it? What I mean is that Sunfyre was a dragon who never gave up, at least not until his very end. Much like his rider Aegon, Sunfyre got wounded several times on the battlefield, but he ensured that he put up a fight. It seems that both Sunfyre and Aegon loved living, and could go to any extent to keep it that way. Additionally, it was Sunfyre who gave Aegon 2 enormous and consecutive victories, first in Rook's Rest and then in Dragonstone. Without these 2 victories, Aegon would have been killed by Rhaenyra long before he killed her. Aegon is known to be a lecherous young man who was quick to anger and slow to forgive, but his bond with Sunfyre was probably the silver lining of the dark cloud that's Aegon. Another proof that Aegon considered Sunfyre as a real Targaryen jewel was the fact that he changed his personal sigil from a red 3-headed dragon to a golden 3-headed dragon. Clearly, this was done in honor of Sunfyre and his golden might and majesty. Sunfyre has not been depicted in the show yet, but I am sure that when it happens, the golden dragon is gonna blow people's minds away. The only thing I hate about all this is that I already know his sorry fate, and now you do too. Who'd win in a riderless battle between Sunfyre and Syrax? You know what? The best way to answer this question is going by facts and stories that we already know, thanks to Martin's source material. So, Rhaenyra was 10 years older than Aegon, and she had bonded with Syrax when she was 7. On the other hand, Aegon rode his dragon for the first time when he was 13. Sunfyre has been addressed as a young dragon several times, and we know that he was definitely younger than Syrax. I believe with age, a dragon not only becomes much more skilled at flying and combat fighting, but also knows how to best an opponent. Furthermore, Syrax used to ride with Rhaenyra, who was clearly smarter and more of a soldier than Aegon, who rode Sunfyre. so I guess Cyrax gets the upper hand when it comes to age. Since we have established that Cyrax was elder than Sunfyre, it is quite evident that Cyrax must be bigger than Sunfyre as well. In the show's first episode, Alicent mentions that Cyrax has been growing pretty fast and could soon become as big as Caraxes. Furthermore, Cyrax is known to be one of the most well-fed dragons in King's Landing, something that is bound to give Cyrax an upper hand, or upper wing. I'm not sure about the term, but then again, I'm not saying that Cyrax would dwarf Sunfyre or that she would win just on the basis of this size disparity, but size and strength will play a role. And yet again, Rhaenyra's dragon swept away the point. As far as their ferocity is concerned, Cyrax was the she-dragon. We have already established in one of our videos about the hermaphroditism of dragons. Do check it out to know more about dragon reproduction and gender. Anyway, Cyrax laid many clutches of eggs during her time, and gradually became a tad bit less ferocious due to the same. Some argue that it was her motherly instincts that made her softer towards other dragons, but that does not mean she spared any humans. On the other hand, Sunfyre was a he-dragon, who probably considered himself the alpha thanks to his rider Aegon. Naturally, Sunfyre gets the advantage here. Additionally, we mentioned how Sunfyre was a dragon who did all he could to survive, even if that meant killing and devouring other dragons like Grey Ghost and Moondancer. However, Cyrax had never really been in a real battle except for once when Rhaenyra took King's Landing, and Sunfyre had bested a wild dragon while being terribly injured and disfigured. Naturally, Sunfyre had more combat experience with him than Cyrax, so I personally would like to surmise that Sunfyre would probably defeat Cyrax in single combat if it ever came to that. Alas, the dragon experienced a rather despicable end, all thanks to his rider Aegon. Had Aegon been a bit more cautious about his dragon, Sunfyre would have achieved greater things for him, just as Daenerys' dragons did for her. Not only did they play an indispensable part in defeating the Night King and his army, but they also helped her take the Seven Kingdoms. Had it not been for Jon, she would have gotten what she wanted, if that were a good thing or bad. We all know the answer to that, don't we? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.